I'm going to be sharing with you in this video how to be consistent with your intentions, goals, and desires. Because the truth is that you can be so much more consistent than possibly you realize. We are so much more powerful than a lot of the times we realize, simply because we don't actually think about how much power we really have. And so the first thing that I want to share with you in this video is to understand that focus, attention, consciousness, and energy on one thing is how you're going to do this. Is if you really want to be consistent with your intentions, goals, and desires, you really want to be putting all your focus, all your attention, all your consciousness, all your energy on one thing. Now, I'm not saying that you can't multitask. I'm not saying that you can't have multiple things on your list per day. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like you can't be focused on multiple things on your list. I'm not saying that you can't multitask many different things in your life. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you put enough energy on one thing at a time, if you put all that focus, all that consciousness, all that energy into just one thing at a time, what's going to start to happen is that you will start to be consistent. And that's what consistency is just putting energy into one thing. And that sounds so obvious. It sounds just like, Francis, that's so simple. That's so obvious. Like, why are you even bringing up such simple things? But here's the thing, is that it's so simple that what happens is that we can allow our attention to be scattered and to be all over the place. And I'm not saying that you can't do multitasking, but what I'm saying is that if there's not enough energy on one thing at a time, then what starts to happen is that we just start to lose all our consistency. We start to lose all of our momentum, and then we have to repeat ourselves over and over. We have to do the same thing again, but we start from scratch. We don't get that momentum that we actually had when we were starting to focus on just one thing at a time. So if you're feeling like in your life you can't really be consistent, you can't be 100% focused on something that you care about, try to just put all that energy into just that task for just a little bit of time. All that energy into just one thing. And then if you lose momentum and you feel like you can't do that anymore, take a rest, take a day off. Of course, take a rest period, stop doing it. But then prioritize that as your task to be returned to as soon as possible. Put all your energy into that thing as much as you possibly actually can. Because if we don't do that, if we allow ourselves to just be scattered, we're not going to create what we actually want. And so if we can start to value the importance of putting all that energy, all that focus on just one thing at a time, you're going to notice better results in your life. It's just as simple as that. If you want to achieve better results, if you want to achieve more results in your life, just try it. Try putting all your attention, all your energy onto just one thing at a time. Just put all your energy into that one thing until you've accomplished the task that you want at hand. And if you couldn't accomplish that task, of course, take a break, but then prioritize to again get back to it until it's done, until it's complete how you prefer to actually see it and how you want it to happen. And of course, it's not going to be perfect, but try your best to just put that energy into that one thing, even if it's not perfect, even if there's human error, even if the thing doesn't happen how you want. Just put enough energy into it consistently every single day if you want, or on a consistent basis, whatever works for you, and just do that every single day. And notice how much more powerful your momentum begins to happen, and how much easier it is to actually create what it is that you want. Start to notice that as you put more energy, more attention into just one thing at a time, how much easier it is to actually build that momentum, to actually build what it is that you actually care about, and to see that all these things that you care about, all these things that you want to see happen in your life will just start to happen when you put in more energy onto just those things, one thing at a time. Not allowing your energy to be so dispersed and to do this and then to do some of that and to do here and then there. And so just like one thing at a time. If you need to take a break, of course, once again, take that break. Take that break. Stop being so focused on, just working until you burn out. Take those breaks. Take those breaks so that you can be at full capacity. But then when you're done taking a break, remember to, again, prioritize that task. For me, this is what works for me, is to prioritize that task and to come back to it with full attention until it gets done, until I complete the task. And maybe it might not get completed in the way that you want. Maybe it doesn't look like how you wanted it. Maybe the human error that's inevitable starts to come up as usual, right? The problems start to come up. Things that you don't want to see happen start to come up. Well, how do you deal with that situation? Well, when that situation comes up, you just remember that the most important thing is not that it has to be perfect. It's not that you need to get the perfect result right away, or that it has to look exactly how you thought it has to look, or you need to get that perfect result until how I said. Remember, I said earlier, it's like, well, finish it until it's done. Well, maybe it won't get done. Maybe it's not going to get finished. Maybe you put in all the work and then so many challenges come up that nothing gets done. You get nothing. Sometimes you're putting in work, you're doing things every single day, you're putting in that effort, you're putting in genuine effort, and you're putting in all this energy and all this effort into one thing, and then what do you get out of that? You get nothing. You get no results, and nothing comes out of that. And then you make many different mistakes on the way, many problems happen, and nothing goes correctly. Well, how do you handle that? Well, you remember that focus and attention and energy on one thing is the priority, and that the result is not your priority. That's not what you should be prioritizing, right? If you want to get a result, don't prioritize the result. Prioritize how much energy you're putting in on a consistent basis to becoming the person that already has the result. It's just really that simple, right? If you focus on becoming the person that already has the result, rather than prioritizing getting the result and then having the result in your hands, that's what's going to ironically help you to get the result. Because if you just focus on those small steps and just being that person every single day, as if you already had the result, or just literally be that person. It's like because remember, when you're being the person that has the result, you've basically already achieved the actual result. Because the actual result is never the result. It's the feeling of being in the state that already has the result, which is what you're actually looking for. People think that, well, I want success, I want this. Well, think about the actions that it would require of you to be the person that you want, and think about that's what your life is going to be. If that doesn't excite you, then just don't do that, because that's what your life is. That's what your life is going to turn into. That's how you're going to be spending 10, 12, 15 hours of your day being. And if that doesn't make you feel good, then you must choose something else, because you're not going to feel good in the state that you're in now to feel better later. But that later is not going to come because you're not feeling good now. So if you're being a type of identity that doesn't feel exciting to you right now, to be in a better future later, that's not going to work. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't put in the work and put in the effort to then achieve a result later. And I'm not saying that it's not going to be difficult now in order for then it to be easy later. That is true. It's true that sometimes we do have to be bored and put simple, boring, consistent, everyday actions just consistently that are just not fun at all until we get that result that we want. That's true to some degree, but also on the other end of the story here, we also need to remember that putting in consistent effort and energy is what is going to that's what's going to be required to create what we want. If we don't put in that focus, if we're not willing to put in the energy because it's exciting to us and it's what we actually want, and it just feels like a burden, then what's even the point? What's the point of putting in all this energy if all of it just feels like a burden to you and it's not even actually fun? If it's not actually fun to you, if it's not actually exciting to you, choose a vision that is exciting to you and then put all your energy into that, because that's the life that you're actually constructing. That's what you're creating for yourself. Don't create a life where you're in the frequency and the vibration of not feeling good now so you can feel better later. And again, I'm not saying that it's not gonna be always fun and that sometimes it's not gonna, I'm not saying that it's not gonna be boring sometimes. Like, it's gonna be boring, but at the same time, remember that those actions that you do every single day, and you're building this life up of these actions, is it fun to you? Is it actually exciting to you? I want you to think about that, because all that energy and all that focus you're putting in on that one thing, that's what your life is becoming. that's who you're becoming. That's what your life is going to be. That's what you're going to be doing every single day, or however often you choose to do it. So choose wisely what you choose, because what you focus on will absolutely grow, and you will get more of it in your life, undoubtedly so. And so the second thing that I want to share with you in this video is to remember that, a lot of times I think that we're so focused on the risks. Oh, what are the risks of, being consistent and taking action? What are the risks of going towards what I want? What are the risks of doing this thing in my life that I absolutely care about? What happens? What is going to happen if I do? What are potential risks if I do this? Or what if this goes wrong? Or what if that goes wrong? Or what if this doesn't go right? Well, let me ask you a question. What are the risks and consequences of not being consistent, of not taking action towards what you care about? What are the consequences of that? What are the consequences of not being the person that you say that you want to be? How are you going to deal with the situation in your life where you don't take action, you don't take a risk, and then what if you feel regret? I won't even list the consequences to you, because I would invite you just to think about what those consequences are. Because yes, there's consequences to being consistent and to take a risk of being consistent towards something, over something else. That's a very real concern. That's a very real fear to have. But remember that on the other side, if you don't take action towards what you want, what are the risks of that? There's definitely risks to not taking action and to not being consistent. Not being consistent towards what it is that you actually care about. There's definitely risks to that. If you're going to spend your whole life taking action, not take action towards that thing, that there's something you want to take action on, there's a risk for that. There's a risk that's going to be associated with not taking action towards what it is that you want. If you're going to allow yourself not to take action towards a goal, there's going to be a consequence that comes as a result of that. And that's a very real consequence. That consequence is just as real and just as raw, or it can be just as scary as taking a risk to go towards something that you want. So when we see that in life, everything is a risk and nothing is guaranteed and nothing is promised. Tomorrow is not promised. Every single moment is really a sacred moment. And when you understand that nothing is granted, really, nothing is guaranteed, you can't really have an expectation for anything. And the moment that you have an expectation or something that you need out of life to be a certain way, that's when you're going to feel a lot of suffering, and you're going to try to control a lot of things, and hopefully not people, hopefully not anything that you shouldn't be controlling, right? Because when you do this, you forget that there's risks to not being the person that you want to be, and to, have expectations for yourself, not to have expectations for other things outside of you, because you cannot have expectations for many of these things in your life. But just remember that as you go through your life, if you don't take action towards what you want, and you're never consistent towards what you want, just remember the very real risk of doing so, of being this type of way. And I encourage you just to really sit with this and to allow this to resonate, because that's going to be something that you have to live with if you choose not to be the person that you want to be. And then maybe, hopefully, it doesn't happen when you realize that time is running out. That sounds scary to say, but hopefully you realize it earlier than later, because the truth is that, like I said, nothing is guaranteed. And when we can live life from this space, I think that it's going to give us more humbleness and more wisdom that we can access to be more focused and to be more dedicated to our craft, and not to just take things for granted in a way where we think that, everything's just guaranteed and that it's all perfect and that everything's just going to happen how you want it. I do like to be confident and believe that if you put enough energy into something, you're going to create it. How can something not happen if you put in enough effort every single day or on an extremely consistent basis? It's going to almost be impossible for it not to happen. But on the other end, you have to remember that it's never going to be guaranteed, and that everything is absolutely a risk at the end of the day. And so the third thing that I want to share with you in this video is just to remember that consistency is going to be easier than not being consistent. And what I mean by that is, I think the only way that we can wholeheartedly and committedly choose the identity 100% with full commitment and full devotion to the point where we know that there's no alternative to be that person, and there's absolutely nothing, there's nothing that's going to stop us from becoming that new person, is when we have the insight and the realization that the pain of not doing so is going to be worse than if we simply do so. And this goes back to the question that I asked a moment ago. Because if you contemplate the question that I asked and you realize to yourself that, wait a second, the consequences of not doing what I want, to me personally, are going to be much worse than if I just take the risk of taking action towards what I want. The potential risk of taking action towards what I want is not as bad as if I don't take action at all. And if you come to that realization, you're going to almost have to take action, and you're going to feel like you don't even have a choice but to take action anymore, because your standards have increased and you've reached what I call the pain threshold for your current world. And that world can no longer serve you when you're no longer happy with it. When you're no longer happy with being a certain type of way in your life, when you're no longer happy with being a certain type of person, that's what's going to push you to make those changes and to be that person and to take those actions and to be something better. But then when you can realize that being consistent towards what you want is going to be easier than just not doing so, that's what's going to help you to be consistent with your intentions, goals, and your desires, is just to remember that it's going to be easier. Any pain that you're worried about, any risk, any pain or problem or whatever you're concerned about coming up to the forefront when you take action or are consistent on a very consistent basis towards what you want to do in your life, when you realize that any pain that comes from that is still going to be less painful than staying the same and not changing in your life, that's when you realize that you're going to be that person and that there's no alternative almost, and that it's just going to happen. And of course, you live your life with that awareness that it's not even going to be guaranteed at all. But you're going to do everything in your power and everything in your control to ensure that there's the highest probability that it does happen in your life, that it's going to happen. Because remember, not everything in life you can control. There's many things in your life that you simply cannot control. You cannot control everything. You simply cannot control many things in your life. There's many things that you just simply cannot control. But if you take full control and full ownership over the things that you absolutely can control, then you know you do have the ability to focus on, and you take responsibility and ownership over those, and then you let go fully of the things that you cannot control, that you absolutely know that you cannot control in your life. What's going to happen is that you're going to be in a place where you're able to be consistent, and you're going to remember that being consistent is absolutely easier than not being consistent. Consistency is easier than not being consistent. And remember that if you actually apply these concepts in your life, what's going to happen is that you're slowly going to start to become that person that you've always wanted to be, and it's not going to feel like a struggle, because the struggle is what motivates you to be better. You use the struggle to be better. The struggle stops becoming a struggle. The struggle becomes something that you enjoy, to enjoy the process and to enjoy the journey. Excuse me again. That's what's going to help you to really remember that it's not the result that you're looking for ever in your life. It's enjoying the process of being the person that you're creating for yourself in this present moment. That's all we're looking for. You know, if you're enjoying this present moment and enjoying this process of creating the vision that you have yourself to be in this moment right now, you are already where you want to be in this present moment, and it's already here. You know, you've already created it, and it's already here. And if you haven't achieved the result yet, at least you're being the person that has what you want, and you know that the feeling of it already exists somewhere within your experience, and you have to follow that excitement and follow that joy, although it sounds cliche, to the point where you know that that's going to be more exciting than not doing anything. You're going to have more fun, less pain, less misery, less suffering, more excitement in your life by being consistent towards what you want than not doing so, because that struggle you're going to use as fuel to be what you want. Struggle stops becoming struggle when you realize this. Struggle stops becoming an issue. It starts becoming something that you use to be better, to increase your performance, to be more consistent. You use inconsistency and a mistake to realize how to be more consistent. You use your failures to realize that how can I be better? You don't even see your failures as a failure anymore. You see not taking action and being consistent as the fail. If you stop taking action towards what you want, now you failed completely, and now you've screwed up completely. Excuse me, right? Now you're in a big situation here. But when you realize that taking action is the success is being the person that you want to be. The success means taking action. If you're taking action towards your goals consistently, you've already succeeded. You've already created what you wanted, because that's what it means to be successful. And if you don't see it that way, I would invite and encourage you, just to conclude this video, to redefine your definition of success. Is achieving a result success to you, or is taking action and being consistent towards the identity that you prefer success to you? Because to me, success has absolutely, I'm not going to say absolutely nothing, but almost absolutely nothing, or to the very least, very little to do with the actual result. If anything at all, I would say it's almost nothing. If not, the result almost has nothing to do, if nothing at all, to your success. Your success is dependent on how much action are you taking, or how much are you taking control over the factors that you can control. Because if you can't take action, well then why can't you take action? Are you fixing the reasons as to why you can't take action? Maybe you just need to mentally model how you're going to take action. That's even can be the first step to being what you want to be, and that can be feel easier than not doing so at all. So what do you need to do to move forward? What do you have to do to be in less resistance that is in accordance to the past of who you used to be? And how can you choose to be the person that you want to be simply because it's more exciting than not doing so? How can you do this in your life? How can you actually be that person that you say you want to be? What is it that you're not doing that's not allowing you to fully step into your true power and to the true identity that you want to see happen in your life? How can you be that person? What are the small steps that you can take? And do those every single day, and then that's how you be successful. If you can redefine your definition of success to be like this, I do believe that you're going to be more consistent. You're going to be you're going to take more action towards your intentions, and all of your goals and all of your desires and everything that you actually care about